Jerome Alexander with Magellan College Counseling, and I'm here with my colleague Lesa Weber, who is based in Texas, and just wanted to give her a few minutes to chat with me and help you get a feel for her personality so you'll know what it's like to work with her. So thanks for taking a few minutes to chat with me, Lesa.
Oh, sure. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, so tell us how you got involved in college counseling.
Well, like most things, it involved experience with my kids. I went through the process with both of my kids. My daughter attended a large public high school in Texas, and my son attended a small private high school in California. So I kind of had the experience of both, high schools, small, large, public, private, and saw their experience. And I was really interested in how both high schools and their counselors approached it. They approached it very differently. And I actually was very intrigued with the whole process because, it had been years, of course, since I had been through it myself. And it was so very different. And we were fortunate enough that my kids were able to visit some colleges and also have more than one school or two schools on their list. And so I actually enjoyed going on tours and visiting the campuses and, exploring majors with them and talking about the process of careers. And it was part of that intrigued me. And so going through that process and seeing other parents really struggling with that and really stressing out about that. I was talking with another independent counselor, which is a thing, which I didn't know was a thing when my daughter started this. She encouraged me. She said, you would be really great at this. I think that you should go get your certificate, which I didn't know was a thing, of course. So I did that. I went to UCLA to their certificate program and went through that program. And here I am today.
Tell us about your education before you were a college counselor.
Okay, so my first career, this is my second career. My first career, I am a dentist. I went to dental school, 4 years undergrad, 4 years of dental school. And I was completely fulfilled doing that. But as life we change and our lives throw us curves. And the new word, as we've learned through COVID, is pivot.
We're good
And
at that.
I pivoted and decided to stay at home, raise my kids. We moved all over the country for different reasons, mostly job reasons. I decided to stay home, raise my kids, and then took on the second career.
And interesting, so your daughter went to high school in Texas and your son went to high school in California. So you have had experience with at least, obviously more schools than that, but the Texas university system and the California university system.
Right. So when my daughter graduated from high school, there was a percentage, I think it was the top 8% were guaranteed admission into the UT school system.
Right.
Now it's 6%.
Right.
And then with my son, the UC school system is, it's crazy and
Not like that at all.
every year. You're right. So, every state has, sometimes they have, a requirement that they have to admit so many in-state school kids, and it's different for every state.
Yeah.
And so I think that Texas and California are probably one of the most competitive in the country. So absolutely. I had experience with both.
Yep, absolutely. So when you're working with a student and their family, what are your goals?
Well, I actually have several goals, but I think the biggest goal, and I would think that it's the parents' goal as well, is for the student to be happy. Because when they're happy, they're gonna thrive. Of course, you want them to be challenged academically, but to be happy socially, to find their community. That's really what makes a student feel good about themselves. And when you feel good about where you are, you're going to do better in every aspect of your life, absolutely. Mostly academics.
Yep.
And so I think that's probably my number one goal.
Yep.
My second goal is to educate both the student and the family about this whole process.
Yep.
I've always felt that when you are educated, you can make the best decision and be confident in your decision, so that when you put that school on the list, if you have done your research and you're knowledgeable about that school and that major or those programs, then you feel confident in putting that school on your list and making that decision about whether it's the right one for you,
Yep.
whether that be about the academics or the fit.
Yep.
And I think that fit is really so important.
Primary. Absolutely.
I think about it's not just about do they offer the intramural programs that I'm interested in, or does the dorm offer this or that. It's about the community. I was working with a really bright young woman of color this past year, and it was really important for her to have a female role model and mentor in her program, and she was interested in an engineering program. And so part of the research was to look at the faculty in the engineering programs that she was researching. And so one school in particular that we were looking at, we looked at the faculty, which is part of what we do for every school. And we just noticed that it was all white men. And that was not really what she was looking for. She was looking for a female mentor, and probably of color would have been good for her.
Yeah.
And also the student body. We looked at the student body and the breakdown, and there was not much diversity. So even though this was an outstanding institution and they had a fabulous engineering program, that might not have been a good fit for her because it didn't offer some of the things that she was looking for to make her feel comfortable.
Right.
And so that was part of the fit that we were looking for.
That's a really good example of how every student's college search is personal and personalized, right? So when people ask me, do you have a curriculum, or, what do you do in the 8th meeting? I can't tell you what I do in the 8th meeting because it's literally different with every student.
Yes, every recipe is catered towards your student or you. There's no, it's not like a chocolate chip cookie recipe.
Well, I was going to say, it's funny that you call it a recipe because I cook the way I counsel. I throw things in until it tastes good. Talk to me about what you think gets overlooked when students first start their college search process.
I think what gets overlooked is sometimes they don't know where to start.
Right.
They're really caught up on names. So first of all, you've got to make sure that the school you're looking at, of course, has your major. That's number one. But I think what gets overlooked are almost not the small details, but honors programs. I think those get overlooked at every single school.
Yeah.
You can take some people might call it a mid-tier school.
Yep.
Has a super selective honors program, maybe even in the, one or the single numeral, percentiles, 10% or less, which is going to put it almost in an Ivy League percentile admittance rate in their honors college. And those get overlooked at every single school. Now, there's a difference between an honors program and an honors college.
Right.
And at every school, they're going to be different. They're not equal. So that goes back again into your research. So you need to take a look at, what does it really mean? What does this honors college and this honors college, and what are the differences? Some you may just take a class or two a semester. One may be classes just for honors students. So really, again, it's back to that research and doing a deep dive. But I think that absolutely is one of the difference that that's overlooked.
Yeah.
And exploring the faculty. Some people may say, oh, it's got a great engineering program. I'm done. I've explored it enough. But again, back to that story, take a look at the faculty, see who they are,
Right.
see what their research is in,
Absolutely.
see what they are. Let's see what they've published. Is it something that you are interested in looking at?
Yep.
Maybe it's something you're interested in doing research in.
Yep.
Maybe not. Maybe they're, take a look at the classes that they're teaching.
Yep.
Are they teaching? So are they teaching the class that you're interested in? So there may be a famous professor, but are they teaching graduate students or are they teaching undergraduate students?
Yeah. That's a big, some of these larger research institutions and some of the, big name schools, they're very focused on the graduate students. This is one of the reasons why so many of us who do what we do, we love the small schools.
Right.
Love the small schools. You're not just going to talk to your professors, you're going to walk their dog every other Friday.
I'm not throwing MIT under the bus at all, but a lot of the undergraduate students at MIT want to go on to graduate school. So you are really clamoring for any of those research opportunities,
Yes.
where at a smaller school,
Yep.
you may not have to, kind of claw your way into those research opportunities quite as hard.
You may not have the sheer number of research opportunities available, but the question is, are they available to you as an undergraduate?
Right. And that is a great question to ask when you are looking at schools, when you're talking and touring. Take, step out of that line, or after the tour is over, go into the departments or the buildings where those departments are, and see if you can catch somebody in their lab or outside of their office and talk to them about that.
Yeah. Well, so all of this research and all of this digging takes a little bit of time. So when do you actually like to start working with families?
Well, that's kind of a tricky question, because if you look at the data, the number one thing that schools look at is the GPA. And the second thing they look at is class rigor. And so it really starts, what classes are you taking? And that starts in the 9th grade and the 10th grade. So looking at those classes that you're taking is important. And so I would really like to talk to families and see what they're taking in the 9th and the 10th grade, especially in math.
Yeah.
Because if you're not taking a certain math in the 9th and the 10th grade, it's hard to get to that calculus by 12th grade, which you really need for not just engineering, but for business, for many of the sciences. So even though you may not need that college counseling in the 9th grade or 10th grade, you need to make sure you're taking the right rigor of class by the 9th and the 10th grade. I think also by the 10th grade, the spring of the 10th grade, you need to start thinking about what timeline are you thinking for your standardized testing? Because for me, I want my students to be completely finished with their standardized testing before the summer of their senior year. Meaning, I want their test, they're taking it twice, 3 times. I want it done before the summer of their senior year, so that the summer of their senior year, they can concentrate on their applications and their essays. I don't want them doing that plus studying for that standardized test and worrying about if that score is going to be back in time to submit for any early action or early decision applications. So I think that sweet spot is really the 10th grade year, the spring of the 10th grade year, so that you've got the rigor class, the most rigorous classes scheduled, you're on track in your math, and you also have that timeline for the standardized tests. I would say that's the sweet spot.
So interesting that you brought up testing, because there have been so many things that have changed over the last few years. In the way we advise students, and testing is definitely part of what's changed. So what do you think the most important things are that you talk about with families and students now that you didn't talk about with them a couple of years ago?
Right. So many students don't want to take the tests, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. It would be one less thing to do. But we're starting to see some schools put testing back in one of the required things that they want on their applications.
Yep.
So, back in 2018, it was about a third of the schools that were test optional. Now, today, about 3/4 of the schools are test optional.
Yep.
But we're slowly starting to see some of them added back. So my advice is take the test, do your very best on the test.
Yep.
And then if you need to apply test optional, there are schools that are test optional.
Yep.
There are schools that are going to remain test optional,
Yep.
but there are some schools that are going to require it. And if you score well, that's awesome. Then you can use that test. You don't want to not test, fall in love, and have a perfect fit school that requires a test and you don't have a test score. So that's my advice.
So obviously I can tell from the way you talk, you're very knowledgeable. You spend a lot of time keeping your skills sharp, staying on top of what's new. What do you love about what you do?
There's so many things that I love about it, but I really think the number one thing is watching the students grow and become confident in their abilities. When I first talk to students, they really don't know much about the process except what they've heard from, their older friends.
Yep.
And many of them are, in some ways intimidated by the whole process and overwhelmed because it's new terminology. It's a scary thing to think that they have worked so hard and their grades are great. And many of them have not tested yet. So that's still a little scary to think about. And they have done so many fabulous activities or spent hours sometimes in sports and to think that that might not be good enough when that's not it at all. To become confident and to become, it's not about them liking me. It's about me choosing them and will they be on my list?
Yes.
To empower them to own the process and to look past the name brands and to really understand, like I said, it's a goal of mine to educate them so that knowledge allows them to become confident in this whole process. That's what I love.
Yep.
That's really what I love.
That's awesome.
And it is awesome. And to celebrate their successes with them.
Yep.
I've been so fortunate that all of my students so far have been so happy with their results. None of them have transferred. I've not had one transfer, which I think is awesome. And I just have had really happy students. And like I said, that's my goal, is to have happy thriving students.
I agree. Happy and successful is what I say to every parent I ever speak to.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Your enthusiasm is obvious and contagious, and you do great work with your students. I spend a lot of time talking with parents of families that we work with, after their process, and every single one of them has so appreciated your personal touch and your care and concern for the outcomes and making sure that each of the students that you work with is happy and successful. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you, Lesa. I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Okay. Thank you so much.